Hi everyone, welcome to Mr. Carlson's Lab. If you're in the market looking for a tube tester or valve tester if you prefer, or you just want to learn more about vacuum tube testers, this video will benefit you greatly. Why do I have so many tube testers? Well, I've held on to a whole bunch of these things so I can just share all the highs and lows of all of these tube testers with all of you. I really don't need all of these tube testers, but I figure this information would benefit everybody here. So, and this is not it, the tube testers that you see on the bench, there's actually more of them as well. So once these are all off the bench, I'll go get another whole bunch and put them on the bench and talk about them as well. So owning a tube tester and using these things is a little bit subjective. So a lot of people buy these because they like the looks of them, and each one kind of has its different features. And of course, you know, it all depends on the vacuum tubes that you want to test. So I'll talk more about that as we're going through all of these testers. And right now we'll start with the Stark 9-66. So many of you want to test tubes and write, you know, the micromos on the actual tubes themselves. So this is known as a dynamic mutual conductance type tester, a little different than just an emissions tester. So this is more of a, I guess you could say, a real world test of a vacuum tube. When you own a tester like this, great tester to own, lots of features on this. The only downfall with something like this is that it doesn't test a lot of the more modern tubes. So if you have, say, Compactrons, or you know, tubes like that, the more modern tubes, the Novar type tubes with the different bases, you know, horizontal output tubes, things like that, you'll need to make an adapter or get an adapter if you want to use a tube tester like this. If you're into testing a lot of the older tubes, these will test older tubes. It'll test, you know, like the standard audio tubes, like, you know, 6SN7s, 6SJ7s. It'll test, you know, 12AX7s, 12AU7s, 6L6s, 6V6s. It'll test all of those tubes that you would you know, get for guitar amplifiers or you know, any type of well, most audio amplifiers. So it tests all those. It tests 7-pin, 9-pin, and all of the, it even tests acorns, and they come with different types of adapters if you want to test some of the tubes that used to be used in hearing aids and things like that, or if you like to build. Great for that. So I guess you could say the good parts of this is it is a micromos tester, so it is a mutual dynamic conductance tester. Downfalls is it doesn't test all the tubes that, you know, are more relevant nowadays. So some guitar amplifiers, again, use Compactrons, and if you're working on some of the more modern test equipment and televisions and things like that, not such a great choice. So that's pretty much this. It has a noise test on it, so you can listen for noisy tubes, which uses a receiver. Very, I guess you could say, a little bit of an in-depth explanation there, but you can test for noise in tubes with these things. Test for shorts. Has the typical English control for all of these things. So when you turn the English control rate down to 0, it says solder, and then when you turn the English control rate up to 100, it says solder. So anyways, so that's this tube tester right here. So great tester to own. Again, just a little bit more specific, more suitable for older type tubes, but it will test most audio tubes out there, so most of the more common audio tubes. Let's move on to the Weston. This is the Weston 981 Type 3 tube checker. Right now I'll tell you that this is one of the tube testers that I really prefer, and I use this a lot. It's a very accurate tube tester. It's a little bit more of an in-depth setup to test tubes, but it is very, very thorough. I did a restoration on this particular tube tester. You can find that in my videos list here on this channel if you're interested in knowing more about this particular tube tester. Very, very thorough. Again, better for older type vacuum tubes. So if you're going to test, you know, modern tubes for, say you're working on either test equipment, televisions, even some audio amplifiers, not so great for anything like that. But if you're going to test just standard audio tubes, again, that will work in, you know, most audio amplifiers. Again, 6SN7s, 12AX7s, 6V6s, those types of tubes. This is absolutely fine for that. And when they're aligned, they are extremely accurate. So again, this one here is a mutual conductance type tester. It's not just an emissions tester. And I will talk more about the differences as we actually come to an emissions tester here. So again, another really, really good tester to own. Very in-depth setup on this. If you don't use this tester for a while, you're going to be reading the manual again. So that's how that works with this thing. So you'll end up, you'll be using this thing a lot. So if you get one of these things, definitely make sure that you get a manual or get a copy of a manual for it. You know, you can use the roller chart here to set everything up. Everything is fine, so everything is, you know, all the tubes edit tests here are in this actual roller chart. One thing I should mention about vacuum tube testers like this, or the one that we just looked at here, and pretty much every tube tester, is when you get it, you want to make sure that the transformer inside functions properly. A lot of people do silly things like plug you know, tubes that have gone to air into sockets in these things, and then they let them sit thinking that the tube's going to come back to life because they don't know what that milky, creamy look inside the vacuum tube is. So when you have a tube that has a creamy look inside of it, that means that the getter is gone and it's gone to air. What happens is tubes like that draw excessive current, and then because you know, the filament doesn't want to light up anymore, so it becomes more of a low resistance. And what it does is a lot of the times people let them just sit in here and it cooks the transformer inside these things. I've even heard people trying to test multiple tubes at the same time. I don't know what some people are thinking, but at any rate, so you want to be you want to know the transformer is good, because if you buy one of these things and the transformer is gone, you basically have artwork or a looker at that point. So that applies to every tube tester that I'm going to show you here. You always want to make sure that you know, you have filament voltage and so on and so forth in these things. So again, great tube tester, very in depth. Lots of features on this thing. Probably one of the most thorough tube testers that I own, and that's the reason that I will hold on to this for the older vacuum tubes. So definitely, if you find a Weston Type 981 and Model 981 Type 3, and you have lots of old tubes and you just focus on, you know, the more common audio tubes, I would say that this is probably one of the finest tube testers to own right here, and that's why I spent all the time doing the alignment and sharing that restoration video with all of you. Let's move on to the next tester. This is the Hickok Model 538. You'll hear a lot about Hickok testers. They have a little bit of a following, so they do demand just a little bit more money. This tester here is almost identical to the Stark 9-66, the one that I first showed you. So this has a few more options. This has a multimeter in the top of it, so if you wanted to use this for more than a tube tester, it does give you a little bit more versatility with the actual tester. But all the other features are pretty much identical. Tests the same tubes. Again, no modern vacuum tubes, really modern vacuum tubes with this one here. It'll test, again, 12AX7s, 12AU7s, 6V6s, 6L6s, 6SN7s, all the more common audio tubes, but no compactrons or anything like that. Now, of course, you know, there is always option. You can build adapters and things like that if you have one of these and you really want to own one of these testers. Again, very, very close to the 966. The meter is pretty much identical with just a different meter face in here. You know, the whole meter is pretty much the same meter. One thing that is a little bit nicer about the 966 is on the top here, it'll actually tell you suppressor screen and all that, where this doesn't really say anything. So that's all in the manual for this thing. So the Stark meter is a little easier to read than this. So things like that, you know, the little bit bolder, I guess you could say, print in the meters and things like that. But again, Hickok has quite a following, and they are a great tester. So this and the Stark are almost identical. So everything I told you for the Stark pretty much applies to this, aside from this having a multimeter. This is the B&K Dynajet Model 707. Again, another mutual conductance type tester. One of the really great things about this is it tests the more modern vacuum tubes. So you can test compactrons, and you have the option of testing some of the more modern 9-pin horizontal output and audio tubes in this. It will test new Vistors on the top here. They've made this very easy to test some of the more common tubes. So like, as you can see here, it'll say 6K6 and then 92. So, you know, for 6K6, you set this to, you know, 6, which is the first number, and then 92 is the sensitivity, and you're ready to test the tube. So they've made this very quick, you know, of course, because of the Dynajet name. Now, if you're wanting actual micromole readings and things like that, you can see that they've somewhat eliminated that from this scale right here. So what they're thinking is, because this is a very quick type tester, you know, people are going to be using this in the field. It isn't a case, right? So you just want to plug a tube in and know whether the tube is good, questionable, or bad. And that's the reason that they gotten rid of that scale. You know, they have somewhat of a coarse scale on the bottom that goes to 120, but that's really all you get. So no really precise readings with this other than red, yellow, or green, really. Another shortfall of this particular tester is for the higher gain tubes like 12AX7, they'll read in the replace scale when they're good. That's noted in the actual manual itself, so you have to know how to use this tester. So for higher gain tubes, they won't go into the green section. They actually stay within the replace. But again, as long as they pass a certain number, they are still good depending on the actual tube itself. They've added two separate boards here, so they've taken a whole lot of tube sockets off and made this more versatile by just, you know, selecting different pin numbers with the selector controls here. So for example, you can see this switch on the top here. We have two neon bulbs, one here and one here. When the switch is out like this upper portion is in use. When you push this down, it kind of locks into place. This neon bulb will go out and this one will come on, and that means that you're now using this. With this particular type of tester, you're going to definitely need the manual for this, because there are many tubes that are not you know, printed on this at all, and you'll need to refer to the manual to set this up. So yeah, there are some shortfalls to this particular tester, but again, it is a very good tester. If you want to test, again, the more modern vacuum tubes, as mentioned, like the 6V6, 12AX7, and so on and so forth, and you're really not concerned about a micromo reading or anything that's super accurate, you just want to know if the tube is good, absolutely fine. If you want to test tubes like number 45s or 80s, or say an 807, or you know, any of those types of tubes, this tube tester is no good, because there's no sockets here for it at all. So it won't test the 4-pin tubes, the 5 pins, a lot of transmitting tubes. This won't test things like that. So if you're just fooling around with some of the more modern audio tubes, absolutely fine. If you're working on a lot of older radios and you need to test tubes for a lot of the older radios and things like that, not such a great tube tester to have. So I did a restoration on this exact tester, and I showed the entire calibration procedure with some modifications as well on this channel. So you can look in my videos list if you're interested in that, if you own one of these, or if you're going to purchase a model 707. This is the Heathkit model IT17 tube checker. Now this is just an emissions type tester, not a mutual conductance type tester. But I'd have to say almost every time, this is really all you need. So before you go, oh, I want a mutual conductance type tester, there are a lot of trade-offs with this tester that make this particular tube tester well worth owning. First of all, it tests so many of the old vacuum tubes, the old radio tubes. It tests so many of the old transmitting tubes. It has the 4-pin, the 5-pin sockets. There are extended lists for this that you can download online that tests so many different types of transmitting tubes. I'd have to say the IT17 is probably one of the most versatile tube testers out there. If you have a Compactron that has 3 triodes inside it, or, you know, obviously, you know, dissimilar, you know, parts inside the tube, you can test each one individually by selecting different levers on here. It has tests for each individual part of the tube, and you can test them for shorts and leakage as well. So it'll test emission, shorts, and leakage for each individual triode inside that tube in a Compactron, or say you have a Novar base or whatever particular type of tube. Fantastic tube tester to own. So definitely this tube tester will have a place on my bench for a very, very long time. This is one of the tube testers that I would highly recommend owning. Again, like all the other tube testers that you purchase, make sure that the transformer inside is okay. You know, a lot of these older tube testers have seen a pretty tough and rough life, and you want to make sure that you know, that the most important part, you know, being the transformer inside, is okay. You can see all the levers it has. to you know, just access all the different portions of the vacuum tube. Just a fantastic tester. Can't say enough good about this particular tester. Just one tester does so much. So this one here is a 2 thumbs up tester. I almost need a wide angle lens for this tester. So this is the B&K model 650. It's just known as the Dynaquick tester. As you can see, this is much like the 707, except this one here has the micromos written on this. And this will also test transistors as well. So another great tester to own, as you can see, diode test and all that great stuff here. Downfall with this is, again, it won't test any of the older tubes like 45s and 80s and, you know, again, 811s and 807s and things like that, but it will test most of the modern tubes. You will also notice on this chassis that this will also not test the really modern tubes, which is the compactrons. So you'll see no compactron sockets on here at all. Again, you know, adapters are possible, things like that. But this is more of kind of a mid area, so not super old and not super new, just kind of mid. So this will test all the most common tubes, again, for audio amplifiers like, you know, 12AX7s and 6L6s and 6V6s. And it is a quicker test like the 707, except you get the bonus of getting micromole readings and being able to test some solid state devices as well. So again, another great tester, but just more middle. You know, it's nothing old, nothing really super modern, more just right in the middle. And you would think, you know, transistors being, you know, used today, that transistors would be the most modern thing. Well, you know, we all know when transistors first came out. So again, kind of a middling type of tester. This is the B&K 675, and it's an automatic tube tester. You can see it has a very limited amount of tube sockets because the cards configure these tube sockets to do many different tubes. So basically, you take your card, you put your card in, and then you click operate, set everything up down here, and then you can plug your tube in and test your tube. When you're done, take the tube out and put your card back. Now, this is a dynamic mutual conductance tester, just like the other B&K units. Absolutely fine unit to own if you want to test the more, again, kind of middling tubes. So this will pretty much test all the audio tubes that are used today, 6V6s, you know, 12AX7s and things like that, 6S and 7s and all that kind of stuff as mentioned before, but it won't test compactrons or the older tubes. So again, kind of in the middle area again. It just, you know, has very easy setup with this. Now, I don't know who this benefits, whether it benefits B&K or it benefits you, because, you know, they managed to cut down on tube sockets by doing this system here. You know, you don't have two huge, you know, pads of just continual tube sockets. But, you know, on the other end of things, you know, if you lose the cards and all that, you know, if it doesn't have a full complement of cards, how really good is this tester? So yeah, this one here is kind of questionable. If you had a chance to get one for the right price, I guess it would be okay. You know, it does test transistors and diodes and things like that as well. Just make sure, again, the transformer is good. You get a full complement of cards, and know that you're not testing compactrons and some of the more modern tubes. It's just basically the most common audio tubes that you would be looking at with something like this. Here's a nice little tester. This is the Precision Model 620. Now, this isn't a conductance type tester. Again, this is just an emissions type tester like the Heathkit IT17. This will test a lot of the old radio tubes for emission, and it'll test right up to some of the most modern common audio tubes like 6V6s and 12AX7s. It will not test compactrons and, you know, some of the more modern horizontal output tubes and things like that. This has a multimeter in it as well, and it will test for noise, so very versatile. You can kind of look at this tester as a mini Hickok or a mini Stark, but it just doesn't test, you know, mutual conductance. That's all. It's just an emissions tester. So very versatile tester, and a nice tester to own if you do not want to test compactrons, and if you do not want to test some of the more modern, like 9-pin horizontal output tubes and, you know, things like that. So again, yeah, very nice. I enjoy using this tester. It's, you know, kind of fun to use, and it does have a really nice look about it as well. You can leave it open and it always attracts attention. Everybody always, wow, what's that, you know? Here's another versatile emissions type tester. This is the Conner Instruments Model 224. It has a combination tube socket that fits many of the old radio vacuum tubes, and it tests right up to compactrons right over here. So another very versatile tester, just like the Heathkit IT17, so very beneficial to own. Just make sure that you get the manual or the lists with this particular type tester. Not a conductance tester, just an emissions type tester, but a very, very nice tester to own. Are you interested in learning more about electronics, both modern and antique electronics alike? I teach electronics in a way that's very easy to understand, complete with circuits for you to build, and over 200 videos at this point for you to learn from. I even share my electronic inventions and creations there as well. If you're interested in those, you can find them on this channel or all over the net. So there's lots of stuff for you to learn from. Circuit diagrams and plans and circuit board layouts and component layout maps, and all of that stuff is available in my electronics course for the circuitry that I teach you on and the inventions that I release. So you're definitely going to want to check out my ongoing electronics course on Patreon if this sounds interesting to you. It's extremely affordable, and I'm there to pass my electronics knowledge on to you. That's why I'm here as well. Definitely check it out. I'll put the link just below the video's description under the Show More tab, and I'll pin the link at the top of the comments section. So if you click on one of those links, it'll take you right there. If you enjoyed this video, you can let me know by giving me a big thumbs up and hang around. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell symbol if you want to see more great electronics footage. There's lots of stuff coming. I've got lots of repairs and restorations and troubleshooting procedures and tear down videos and all of that stuff on this channel, because that's what I'm all about. This channel is all about electronics. All right, until next time, take care. Bye for now.